Can't tell if I'm looking at the old.
Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evagnoni.
bringing you this special edition because we did our weekly podcast yesterday, but then we had gotten on to of Ascended World, and we got on to a conversation once we got offline and realized, wow, this is like an even bigger than a bread box kind of topic, and we didn't want to wait for another week because
Right.
who knows where we'll be by then. So
Yeah, 'cause there'll be something new by then.
so
I'm trying to find us on our page.
I found us. I found us.
Was it under videos?
No, it just came up on the regular feed.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So anyhow, we were talking yesterday about guidance free of judgment, of being able to, of shifting ourselves to be able to look at guidance and observe it and get it and accept it without judging it with emotion, or that it's bad or good, that something's scary, that it's, ominous or evil or whatever.
Right.
And so after we did that shifting at the end of the session, with everyone, then, we were talking about all this stuff. And so it's been coming up, and we've had this now twice yesterday. We had this conversation. It's like,
right.
Oh, we talk about this for hours without even skipping a beat. But so it's really interesting is how, so many of us, you and I included, have had somewhat regular pokes and prods from guidance over the past several years about different underpinnings, right, of, say, like the government or the people in power, or people want to call it the Illuminati and all that kind of stuff. And it's such a big topic because it's so funny. You tend to have these really extreme schools, right? You have somebody who's like, right, oh my God, everybody's out to get us. We're like in so much trouble. We're powerless. We're victimless, and right? Death to the man, right?
Right.
Or the Illuminati, or whatever you want to call it. And then you have the others who are just in complete, good morning, Laurel, in complete denial about the whole thing and saying, oh no, that would not, that's like way over exaggerated. That's
right. And it couldn't be.
It couldn't be, right. That's way too crazy.
Right.
Way too crazy. So
paranoid.
Yes, and paranoid, which is what then people just run right to. That's the judgment, right? So what's been interesting is how we have gotten these prods and pokes to look at certain things that have, held the title of conspiracy theories, right? Or ulterior motives of those in power, or all this kind of stuff, even all the way back to when we first started. And so like part of this, and this goes along with so many parts of our spiritual journey, because it comes along with the acceptance of our dark side, right?
Right.
With the importance of the acceptance of our dark side. And also, like the acceptance of it, the understanding of it, and see it in the bigger picture as part of the whole. And also the acceptance of guidance without judging it as good or bad or evil or crazy or paranoid or whatever, right? Or just, and the other part is the listening to your own guidance over what others tell you, right? If somebody says, oh, this is totally what's going on, and somebody says, oh no, this could never go on, it's like, okay, well, let me check my guidance and see what my guidance tells me.
Right.
Is this my truth? Is this, not my truth? So, and this leads to a lot of discussion because, I've been so it's come up a lot because I was guided to read this book that was published in the early 90s called Behold a Pale Horse.
Mm-hmm.
And what's his name? Milton William Cooper, I think, is the author, right?
Right, Bill Cooper.
So, and who's dead now, by the way, from some shootout with federal agents or whatever. So,
but no conspiracy there.
Which just adds up to the great story around it. But he's only one of many, and I keep on finding stuff. If you look at all the things that are coming up like on our subversive cable channels, right? Like the History Channel, like has a lot, like look at Ancient Aliens, right? Look at all that kind of stuff in that exploration. That show's been going on for years now, right?
Right.
And it surprises me when I bring it up to somebody who hasn't heard about it, because I'm like, oh, that show's been on forever, you know?
Right.
But, and that whole show is around talking about looking at our artifacts and seeing where, you know, what they call aliens, I call them star beings, have been like an integral part of our, you know, our culture. So, you know, what's really funny is there's all these mumblings, all these rumblings. You see all the stuff in the spiritual community about what? About, oh, like first contact, right?
First.
And we're not judging, we're just laughing.
Yeah, no judgment in that laughter.
Nope, not at all. But the whole thing about, like, you know, and this is this guy who started the book that I'm reading, you know, he was talking about, and it's really funny because in the intro he talks about his background. He was in, like, you know, military intelligence for years. He was in Vietnam. He, like, all this kind of stuff. And he even says in the beginning, he goes, okay, so a lot of people say I'm a quack, that I am paranoid, that I'm, you know, an alcoholic and everything else. And he's like, and you can believe everything they say, but do the research yourself.
Right.
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 Believe everything they say, believe nothing they say. It's fine, you know, but you're here for a reason.
Right. You were drawn to my material for a reason.
Right. So like, not like in the beginning, he's like talking about star beings, AKA aliens, and how, like, you know, the government's covered that up. And, you know, has started this whole, like, spew of discussions with my husband, who, you know, he gets all this stuff. And, you know, we were in the car one day and I said, yeah, you know, it's so funny, like, that there's so much guardedness around that whole alien thing still. Like, that there's, again, two completely separate, like, schools. Like, there are people who are like, of course, right? And then there are people who are like, oh no, that's ridiculous, right? That's the stuff of, you know, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever.
Right.
Which, you know, it's both. It's not ridiculous. It is sci-fi, and it is, you know. But, you know, and we were talking about it in the car like the other day, and I was just like, you know, I said, I really find that really interesting. I said, so is it at the point that the government just feels like they've held it back for so long that it's just not an easy lie to, like, admit?
Come clean on. Right.
Yeah, come clean on, because it's been going on for so long.
The ramifications would be too massive.
Well, and so that's what Scott and I were talking about. We're like, so what do you mean? Like, what do we mean by that? Because we say that, but I'm like going, I think more people are primed now to say, okay, that it would actually almost be different from what many would think it would be, where I think it would almost be like paparazzi. People would start, like, searching it out. You know?
Right. And I think personally, I feel that the people in charge who've been in charge of clamping down on that information are the ones who are like, I can't let my reputation go. I can't be exposed.
Right. And there's that fear of authenticity, right?
Right.
The fear of honesty and vulnerability, which goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. Right.
Right.
And so, and it's funny because, you know, I was saying that in the car and I said, honestly, is it really that much of a stretch anymore? I mean, it's all common in our cultures, like, to talk about space and, you know, beings and whatever.
Well, and I mean, just look at our entertainment.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like Star Wars, Star Trek, you've got like Lost in Space, you've got, you know, all these shows now that are all about that. Right.
Did you hear that ding?
No.
Must have been here. I heard almost like a bell, like ding. We must have hit on something good.
Yeah. Right. Yasmin says also the fear of chaos is a reaction. I know, but that's the funny thing is I don't think there would be chaos in that way. I think there would be chaos. There might be a mutiny because people are finally saying, okay, so what else are you lying about?
And I think that's the biggest thing, because it's like you can't just pull the Band-Aid off a little bit. You have to take it all the way off. And I think that they can't, you know, it's like either you take the lid off or you leave the lid on.
Right.
And so if this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, right. And so, it's funny because, we're having this conversation and Scott says, when I said that, he goes, yeah. He goes, what I think is funny is just the concept. He goes, because what do they say now? He's like, what astronomers say that they estimate there's like 300 some odd billion planets that they can estimate have, can sustain life as we know it. And I said, yeah, right. As we know it, meaning in that egocentric sense that all life in this multiverse has to be the same structure as us, which is ridiculous too.
Right.
But even as we know it, right, carbon-based form or whatever, right? And he goes, so I find it, he goes, all right, so that's even only of the known universe, which is infinite. So like, that's a ridiculous number anyway, because, whatever, it just keeps on going. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, so he goes, I just don't even understand even today, like how anybody could even think that we're the only things in the universe that has consciousness.
Right.
I'm like, I know. Well,
I mean, even we're discovering more about the animals that have co-inhabited this planet with us, and their need for compassion and bonding and things like this, in midst of tragedies, whether it's the fires or the victim of our trash or things like that.
Well, yeah, because actually it's so funny how I laugh because one of my favorite books of all time is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? And the whole thing in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they talk about, humans foolishly think that they're the most, intelligent beings on Earth, right?
Right.
And it's like, and they say that the most intelligent beings are mice, and then the second most intelligent beings are dolphins, right? And whales. Right. And they're like,
if you want to put longevity, and if you want to add longevity as a factor, it's the cockroach.
Oh, right. No kidding. Or pure endurance, man. They are the garbage takers of this planet.
I mean, I've read that they can live for 15 days once their head's cut off, and that's only because they can't drink.
But I mean, and so and it's so funny because it's like I don't know if we've sort of talked about it here, and I know I talked about it on my Living the Shift podcast about the whole science is only like, is it science or consciousness? And it's like, well, science comes from consciousness.
Right.
And science is only about what we are conscious enough to be able to explain via our own reference, right? So people talk about science as being, the be all end all, and I'm like,
basis.
Yeah, except science is only as good as we're conscious about, right? Look at quantum physics. Look at all the stuff that we had no concept about years ago, or we thought was like, fiction and all that kind of stuff, but that they're being able to prove multiple dimensions, and all things, multiple universes, all that kind of stuff. So there's all this stuff, and it's like, okay, and then I always laugh because my whole big thing is, why do people look to the sky and think some flying saucer is going to come in? Because they're already walking amongst us. Like, star beings, we're here.
Right, they've already arrived.
I've had so many conversations, so many interactions, so many.
Actually, it's more like they've never left.
Right. They've never left. We've just been in a different level of vibration, right? And that's until we merge in that vibration, then we can like communicate. That's what started happening when, I started meditating and all that kind of stuff. But, we have so many topics around this that we could talk about. Let's talk about the thing that comes up a lot. The real conspiracy is the Illuminati and the whole power thing. Like, people talk about the Illuminati, which, it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter what you call it, right? There is a small group of individuals on this planet who holds a vast majority of the power, right? And so people are like, wow, and it's so funny how like people get really dark about that. As soon as that happens, like they're like, oh, well, or like I said, they either totally rebuke it or they get really fearful about it. Right.
Right.
And I've always just been like, okay, so what does that mean for us? Like, what was that about? Because that's us, right? Like we were talking about last night, right? That's us.
Right.
So part of the reason we're talking about this is because guidance is starting to come in to just look at some of this stuff. And I think it's actually been a collective thing to ease the information to the surface, right, in a very soft and easy kind of way. And that's how we have all the stuff in our media, right? We have like the Ancient Alien shows, and then we have this, and we have that, and we have the In Search of shows, and we have all that kind of stuff. And so it's sort of like seeding, right? Seeding our consciousness to remember.
Right.
You know, and I've been getting a particular nudge for a number of years now. I don't even know how many years. It's been a while. Like, oh, remember this, remember this, remember this. And I'm like, I have no idea, no conscious recollection of what this is. And, you know, we've done searches, we've done all kinds of stuff. And so I keep on just putting it on the shelf. Well, it's funny because the word shows up in the book that I'm reading, right? Even though it wasn't in context of the thing. It's like, oh, but this is all that. This is all that. I get it. Wow, the light went off in my head. But the key is this, you know, it was really interesting. And I'm only in the first part of the book because it's a very intense read, because there's a lot of thick and meaty material in this book, right, to consider. And so I was looking at it, and this is what led us into our conversation yesterday too, when we were talking about this. And, you know, he talks about the system, they was talking about how, I think and I can't remember, I think it's Rothschild, one of the families in power, whatever, back in the 40s, you know, hired Harvard to do this, program of this research to, look at the structures of different sciences that are the same across the different sciences that allow for predictable results, and to take it and to apply it to social sciences, to people, and to see if it actually worked as a predictive formula, which apparently it did. And so then once that started showing up, like a whole bunch of others jumped in and put a whole bunch of money into that. And then as computers became more commonplace, then of course data crunching became so much more efficient, right? So it was a lot easier to do this on a really large scale. So when I'm looking at that from a very easily, you know, analytical, from a very mind standpoint, just not even looking at guidance, when I'm looking at that going, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like, of course you can do that.
Right. Exactly.
I was like, well, okay, I've never seen it laid out in detail on like how it's been like, you know, considered and done and whatever. And I'm just like, well, look at our reality today. Like, look at how much we are controlled by everything that comes into us. And so it's like, okay, let's not even talk about the whole controlling thing, right? It's a matter of what we have chosen to create as an experience here, right?
Right.
For the duration of this, for a good portion of the duration of this experiment, right? So where do we take it from there? That's when we got to other parts.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've got so much information flooding in right now. If you look at it from the perspective of you're just inundated every day with this, you know, and I hesitate to call it brainwashing, but it's like your day is nothing but a commercial to manipulate your behavior. And if you tap into guidance and allow that to be your navigator through that, to figure out what works for me, what serves my highest and best, what brings me the joy, you know, and it might be that, yes, spending my money, exchanging money for this product is the best thing for me, but it's because my guidance said so, not some spokesperson or actor who was paid or whatever to tell me that that was best for me.
Right.
And as we start to make that shift, the power falls away.
It does. Right. Because, and this points also back to, and so here's the thing, no victimology here. There's no victimology. We chose this.
We created it.
We created it. Right.
which, brings a whole new level of judgment once you come to this place of, and I hate to use the word enlightenment, but remembering. Once we remember and we recognize this, it's like, oh crap. And then it's like, oh, and I created it.
Right. And then the dark side to you goes, oh yes, we did.
Isn't it the best?
Isn't it the best thing ever?
Right. Which, I've found, and I'm feeling some self-judgment for that.
Right. But the question I have that I've yet to remember, and I don't know if it's even posed somewhere in the book, is ultimately, what does it matter? Right. Why would it matter whether there's a couple individuals that control everything? Like, what's the purpose of the game? Like, there's to me, that's not even fun. I don't know. It's just okay, unless there's something else that we haven't yet remembered. But the thing is, oh crap, where is I going with that? I just totally jumped 4 steps ahead and I forgot where I was. To remember. Yeah. Oh yeah. The power thing. So it was time for so the thing is, it's time for us to remember that, right? It's held the structure in place.
Right.
And now it's time to remember that. And so I asked, why am I being guided to look at this stuff lately? Something that I've never really had interest in. And the answer that I get is because it's important to know how to navigate it so that you can transcend it. Right. That it makes it easier to transcend, because we can transcend it if we choose to. It's just a matter of, there is such a depth of it, right? There is look at the roles when we say roles, they are all created. We are all created illusions of what we're expected to be, the kind of person we're expected to be, and how we can limit ourselves based on that role. Not how do we expand ourselves based on it?
Limit.
How do I limit? And when we start looking at it from that perspective, you're like,
it's like, wait a minute.
It's like, what? With the hand on the hip, like, what?
Right.
But it's the truth. And so
and if we don't learn how to circumvent and navigate it, those that do will bring about the collapse of it, and then we'll have no choice.
Right. And part of I think the repetition of us peaking in remembrance and collapsing has been, maybe that's what the fight has been, the battle has been, right? The race has been, I don't even want to call it the battle, or it's sort of how it gets done makes a difference. How it gets collapsed makes a difference. Right? Well, I get all tingly when I say that. So
it's almost as if in previous cycles around, it collapsed due to such intense complexity of the processes themselves, to where it had to just reset. Now it's just disintegrating, which I find different than collapsing.
Well, and I think what's imploding is what's happening too, right?
Right.
And part of it is because that's what you and I got to yesterday, that I thought, wow, this is really important, is, so if we look at the amount of just sheer information that we have to process in our lives every day.
Right. And keep track of and remember.
And everything else, right?
And navigate.
And what has been created, right, is this, it is like the mind, it's almost like the battle has truly been the mind versus the spirit. The mind trying to create its own universe, right, of management, versus the spirit of consciousness and wholeness, right? And that's sort of like the battle of, people can call it the good and evil. They can call it separation, duality and wholeness. They can call it whatever, They can call it God and the devil. It doesn't even matter. It's all part of the same thing. But it's almost like, it feels like that whole thing, what we've created with the internet, right? With phones distracting us all the time, with, computers, with TVs, with all this stuff that just constantly is pulling our attention away from actually being conscious within ourselves, right?
Right. And just information.
Right. Is just, it is the effort of replication of the spirit into a mind connection, right? But the challenge is we lose the spirit in that.
Right.
And then we just become machines.
Right.
Which is really what has happened in many respects. So, and it was somebody else I was talking to yesterday was talking about how they've been guided to look at this stuff too, and how subtle but constant there are reminders in all the movies you watch, even kids' movies, about drinking alcohol and, eating sweets, and how that's a reward, and, and
right.
And basically giving ourselves this dopamine constantly to make us numb and content. Like, you stay in your little cage and be happy. Right?
Stay in your box.
Yeah. So the key is there's no judgment on this. And this is, I honestly, we've had a lot of laughs about it, because like, oh, look at this that we created. Like, it's, and now like the fun game is navigating it to be outside of it. And it truly is the Matrix. It truly is the Matrix.
Right.
That's the really funny part.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like the movies that are pointing this out have to do it in such an exaggerated way to where they slip past people.
Yes.
But still plant that seed of, oh. So it's very subtle remembering.
Yes. But yet constant. And it's been a growing rumble. Right. Funny. Rumbling has been coming up a lot lately.
Right.
Underneath the surface. Collective awakening. And the thing is, so what, people are saying, well, what do we do with this? Right. Well, it's like, as we create, it's like almost like we're encompassing it. The earth, the way I've seen it, it was like this little mercurial ball as it's been. So it's been very reflective and shiny. And then we're creating something outside of it, but we're so addicted to what's inside that mercurial ball, right? Because of all the play we've done,
right?
In the mind, right?
Well, and how much we've invested in it,
right.
in the reflections and the nuances of it.
Yeah. Yep. And so, what I was of understanding what came yesterday is that, and over the past several weeks has been that we're creating sort of another dimension that encompasses it to assimilate through and break it up, right? To allow that wholeness again, to allow it to sort of integrate with the whole as part of the whole, but the first step for us is to get out of our addiction to it, because when we do, we just get ourselves drawn right back into the quicksand, right? So it's like what I was seeing yesterday and I share with somebody is like putting our little finger into the mercurial ball, right? And you and I are talking about that. It's like putting the finger in, but then getting your whole arm stuck in, or pull right in. And then us pulling each other out. And there are more and more of us remembering our consciousness that's out there, right? And that's the awakening. And then it's so important for us to help each other remember to stay out of that addiction, like to pull ourselves out, right, and just to keep the reminder of this is the way for us to change it and evolve it and move on to the next step. Maybe one day the why will come to me, but we just know it. We just know it. And it's not bad. It's just that we've gotten so stuck in it. It's like we don't know what to do otherwise. Like we don't know. We've lost our way of how to break the patterns because they're so deeply ingrained.
Right. Right. And the underlying basis is the perpetuation of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there's theory out there, and I'm sure this will come up in the book too, that I'm reading is, illness, epidemics,
yeah. Right.
All these things fabricated to make it seem like, oh no, we have your back, we have a vaccine for you, we have this or whatever, but yet it was created by the same people kind of thing. And yes, that sounds conspiratorial, but it's actually just part of the game.
Right.
And I worked in marketing for the drug development industry years ago, and it was incredible, some of the things I saw that were just like that most of the public would just not even believe.
Right.
But I saw it in my own two eyes, and lived it, every day for 6 years. So and that was it was just it, and that was even a fraction as intense as it is today.
Right.
So, part of it is connecting with our heart, connecting without the phones, connecting without the TV and the computers, being able to connect to each other and know that we're already connected, and to keep ourselves in that transcendent place.
Right.
So let me see if we have any other notes that we wrote down from that yesterday. Right. And no, that was it. And so one of the big things that we came to yesterday was coming to a point of not necessarily believing what our eyes see.
Exactly. And I think that goes back to what we talked about yesterday with that guidance.
Yeah.
Why it is so important.
Right. Because like that whole saying, what seeing is believing. Nope.
No.
Nope. Nope and nope.
Exactly. Well, and I mean, if it's like, same as hearing, it's like actions speak louder than words. That's the most important thing is behaviors, and, and then guidance as to what resonates with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I came up with that. Like, I remember when we were in Shasta several years back, remember we had that whole conversation of, that I was getting this perception that it's really opposite world, sort of like opposite world.
Right.
Remember, and in that show Stranger Things on Netflix, they have what they call the upside down world. And I laugh about that because I'm like, I think we live in the upside down world. Like, I think this part of us is actually in the upside down world. And everything is quite the opposite of what we think it is.
Right. And that we have believed, we've fallen into the set and the script for a play or a TV show or a movie or whatever, and we're believing it.
Yeah. Well, the script that we wrote too, by the way, which is so funny.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I think the key is for now is truly focusing on that, listening to guidance, to trusting to trusting the consciousness over the mind of the ego, right? The mind is managed by the ego in terms of how it has to be defined, what it has to be, what the eye see, therefore it is, that kind of stuff, to transcend all of that, to be able to see the bigger picture, free of emotion, and building on yesterday, right?
Right.
In a place where we can accept and just say, okay, what is there? It's like, what is there to do about this? What is there for me to do now if I'm seeing this, if I'm understanding this?
Right. And it's I think this is the big important step where it's simply, this is a recognition step.
Yes.
And opening that door, cracking that door to possibilities.
Yes.
Other than what we've believed for so long.
Yeah. Hey, once you can recognize it, you can remember how to actually play in the matrix.
Exactly. And I think that's where this is going.
Yeah. I mean, it is free will, but it's like doing it in a way that you're conscious and not, it's being in it and not of it, right? That's that true statement of being in it and not of it. Right.
Right. All with no judgment.
Yes. So the remembrance of that, to open that door, right? To have that consciousness and observation, to see it all, to remember to step back and ask, what is there to do about this? What is there for me to see about this? What is there that's, important to the bigger picture? without the emotion, because once the fear kicks in, that's when we shut down, we start to limit our filters, we
Right.
do a whole bunch of stuff. It's like,
We retract our energy versus expanding it.
right. Right. And so, like, now what I've been talking about is like setting yourself to have an open heart and allow all possibility. Right.
Right.
So all of that in a nice little bow of
For a Tuesday
playtime
morning.
for Tuesday morning. Right. All
Right.
right. You ready?
I am.
kept on starting to come back, and it was like, nope, not yet. Nope.
Yeah, there was a lot.
That was such a big collective thing. That was huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, there's a big yawn. I can't even tell you everything I saw. I started to see, the one thing I did see that was specific was I remember seeing Yasmin agrees, seeing like a pool of water that had, like that was all mucked up with like algae floating on the top.
Right.
Literally just putting my hand in the water and it just all dissipated, so that then the water became crystal clear. And I was like, yeah, that. And that was like instilling our remembrance on doing that in everything, right?
Right.
Being able to see clearly through the illusions, right? And that felt really good. And then it was just like, I can't even describe it because it just got so big so fast. And it was like this, it was like a ripple, but not, it was almost a circular ripple, like a spiral. That's what it was. It was like a spiral that was getting bigger. And I was like, oh yeah, this is so much better. That felt really good.
Yeah. Yep. In the beginning, it was one of those things where it was like, almost like seeing what we've been doing. I almost laughed out loud and looking at that. I was like, and then it immediately flipped to this overwhelming sadness. And then it kind of evened out, but it was like, look at what we've been doing. Then it was like, oh my God, look at what we've been doing. And it's like, okay, so that's what we've been doing.
Right. That's the process.
Right. Yeah. So it was, now it almost diffused the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, putting your hand in the water and watching all the algae just go like,
right.
Yeah. It's like,
right.
Oh, that was easy. Huh. I have to remember to do that all the time,
Right. Right. Yeah. Retraining ourselves.
Yeah. That felt great. Oh, I'm just going to sit in that all day today.
No kidding.
Well, I'm glad we did the second part because I think this was really important.
Right. No, I agree.
Whatever's going on, I think that's what the rumbling is that many of us feel, is this like collapse of that veil, right? Collapse of the illusion, or the blocked visage of, not seeing what's behind the man behind the curtain, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it feels really good. And realize it's us. That's me behind the curtain too.
That's right.
So playing in the Matrix, that's what we do now.
Right.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Can't wait to see you what the rest of the week brings.
This is just Tuesday.
It is just Tuesday. All right, everybody have a great week. Thank you. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evignoni,
closing out on this week's second special edition of Ascended World. Have a great one.